I found her standing on my porch just past sundown, hair tangled with dust and wind, a torn calico dress clinging to her like it didn't belong to her body anymore. She had no hat, no shoes, and no fear, just those burning green eyes. Behind her, 6 smaller shadows huddled on the trail like skittish colts, thin, dirty, and watching me like I might draw steel or salvation. "Tessa Boone," she said, and her voice was raw from wind or crying, maybe both. "All 7 of us are yours, if you'll have us." I didn't speak. Couldn't. The words were too big for the silence. My eyes flicked to the girls behind her. The youngest couldn't be more than 4. My mind screamed questions, but none of them made it to my mouth. "We got no place to go, Mr. Pryor," she went on, stepping closer. "No men left, no kin willing. And the men who would take us in," her voice caught, "they'd take us, not help us." Her hand rested on the rail beside me, long fingers, scraped at the knuckles, smeared with soot and pine sap. A working hand, a surviving hand. I could smell her, horse sweat, wood smoke, and something raw underneath, like river mud and fear. "Tessa," I managed, "your pa's body's not even cold." "No," she said softly, "but he ain't in it anymore." And just like that, she stepped over my threshold. Inside, I'd left a fire burning low and stew on the stove. She looked at the room like it was a church or a gallows. Then she turned and whistled once, sharp. The other girls came running, darting past me like deer through tall grass. One clutched a rag doll by the throat. Another had blood on her hem. They didn't look back. "I need you to understand something," she said, voice trembling now that she was in the warm. "This wasn't Samuel Boone's idea. It was mine. My sisters didn't ask for this. I brought them here. You walked 13 miles on foot to throw yourself at a stranger?" I said. "You ain't a stranger. You're the only decent man Pa trusted. He told me if anything happened, bring him to Pryor. He said you'd do right by us." "I don't marry girls," I said flatly, "especially not 7 at once." Her smile was tired and bitter. "That ain't what I'm offering. I'm offering alliance, protection, marriage if it keeps the sheriff's dogs off our heels. But what I really got—" She reached into her bodice, fingers grazing skin she didn't flinch to show me, and pulled out a leather pouch. It landed on my table with a heavy thud. I opened it. Gold. Worked nuggets, river polished and stamped in a way I hadn't seen since before the war. "Your pa struck this?" I asked, heart starting to hammer. "He found it, deep. Said it ran under your land and ours like a buried serpent. He said he was going to file a claim. He never got the chance." She nodded. "They made it look like a stroke. But he wasn't sick. He was strong. Stronger than you. He was murdered, Judson, for what he knew." I sat hard in the old pine chair, the legs groaning under me. Her eyes didn't blink. She just stood there, hands folded in front of her, daring me to say no. "And you think they'll come for you next?" I asked. "I know they will. They were watching us, even at the burial. That's why we ran. You're next." The wind moaned against the shutter. Somewhere outside, an owl called low. Her sisters were curled on the floor by the fire, already asleep. My stew pot bubbled once, then fell quiet. I looked at her. She looked at me. She was too thin, too proud, too damned alive to let this world eat her. I said, "You can stay." Her shoulders dropped a fraction. She didn't smile. She just breathed. "And you?" she asked. "What about me? Are you going to help us? Or are you just going to feed us and hope we leave before morning?" I stared into those green eyes, burning like coals that would never cool. "I'm going to help," I said, and I knew I'd just stepped into something deeper than any mine shaft Samuel Boone ever dug. The next morning, I found them everywhere. Tessa at the stove, sleeves rolled high, working bacon in my old cast-iron skillet like she'd done it 100 times. The little ones picking through my barn for dry kindling and eggs, my old tin coffee pot already whistling. They moved like they'd always lived here, like they belonged, which scared the hell out of me. I watched from the doorway, shirt unbuttoned, suspenders hanging loose, shotgun still warm from the night I spent sitting up, guarding the front window. I hadn't slept, not with what she told me. "Where's the gold now?" I asked quietly, once the girls were out of earshot. Tessa glanced over her shoulder, dark braids sliding against the curve of her back. Hidden in plain sight. Try again. She wiped her hands on my apron, then walked to the cupboard, reached up and pulled down the heavy flour tin. Inside wasn't flour. There was another pouch, this one fatter. I emptied it onto the table. Not just work gold, but documents, maps. One of them showed our adjoining properties, hand-drawn in pencil, with a smudged red line cutting under both our barns and heading toward the dry creek bed. Another bore an embossed seal. Territorial Land Survey Office, 1879. "Your pa got this officially stamped?" She nodded. "This vein runs right under my land. Half under yours, half under ours. But the moment Pa filed, someone got wind. Next morning, he was found dead by your creek." I remembered the scene. Samuel face down in water no deeper than a man's boot heel. No blood, no wound. But his eyes were open and glassy, like he'd seen something coming and chose not to run. "You think I'm next?" I said. "No." She leaned closer, breath warm on my collarbone. "I know you are, unless we make it so you ain't." Her fingers grazed the edge of the marriage certificate she'd pulled from her coat the night before. Blank, but ready. Signed only by her. "You really think a piece of paper will protect you?" "I think a piece of paper makes me a prior. It makes my sisters priors too. And it makes your land, your house, and your protection legal. And them watching us, it'll confuse them, buy us time." The way she said us hit something raw in me. "I ain't had a woman in this house since my wife passed," I said quietly. "She ain't asking for your bed," she said, then paused. "Not unless you want me there." Her eyes softened. That was the first time I saw her blush. Just a flicker under the dirt, but it was real. "I don't want charity," she said. "I want safety, and I'll earn it. My sisters, too. You'll never lift a finger again you don't want to." I reached for the documents again, thumbing through the notes in Samuel's neat, blocky handwriting. My throat was dry. The scent of her. Salt, ash, something female and wild, was too close. "You're playing a dangerous game, Tessa," I said. She smirked. "So are you, Judson." That night, she took the girls into the barn to sleep under the hayloft, said they'd be more at ease near the animals. I stood by the back door and watched her move. She was leaner than I realized. Her hips narrow but strong, her back straight even when carrying the youngest on one arm and a water bucket in the other. When she looked back over her shoulder, our eyes caught and stayed, just for a second. Later, I found her sitting on the porch in my old duster, knees drawn up, moonlight on her bare feet. She didn't speak, neither did I. But when I sat beside her, She leaned her head against my shoulder like it had always fit there. I didn't sleep again that night, but for different reasons. The sun had barely cleared the ridge when I heard horses, 3 of them, coming fast and heavy up the trail. I stepped onto the porch, boots laced tight, rifle leaning against the doorframe. Tessa stood behind me in one of my old shirts, sleeves rolled and belt cinched at the waist, hair still damp from the morning pump. She froze when she saw the lead rider. "Marcus Finn," she whispered. I knew the name. Territorial land agent. Wore a badge he paid for, not earned. Had a reputation for seizing disputed land under eminent domain and then flipping it to mining companies for 10 times the price. Always seemed to show up right before someone disappeared. He looked clean, but not polished. Too sharp around the eyes. Smiled like a cat sniffing under a chicken coop. "Judson Pryor," he called as he dismounted. His 2 riders hung back, rifles visible. "You got a minute?" "Not for liars," I said, but I didn't lift the rifle. "Not yet." He chuckled. "You got a dead man's watch on your land. Thought you might want to explain that." He reached into his coat, slow, deliberate, and pulled out Samuel Boone's pocket watch. I recognized it instantly. Engraved with the Boone family crest. It had been missing since the body was found. "You accusing me of something, Finn?" I asked. "No, sir," he said smoothly. "Just wondering why that watch turned up buried in the mud behind your barn." I felt Tessa shift behind me. Her hand touched my back, just 2 fingers, steadying. "You got a warrant?" I asked. "Nope, just questions." "Well, I got chores," I said. He took a step closer. One of the men behind him stiffened. "You live alone, Judson. Can't imagine keeping a place like this up all by yourself, especially with how tidy it looks. Barn roof looks freshly patched, clothesline has work dresses hanging, real small ones too." He wasn't just guessing. He'd circled the property. Tessa stepped beside me then. Shoulders squared, face calm. "You're trespassing, Agent Finn. This is Pryor land. Ain't no law says you can prowl around a man's house without permission." His eyes slid to her. "Miss Boone?" "Mrs. Pryor," she said coolly. His eyebrows lifted, then the smile turned feral. "That was quick?" "You think time moves slow when you're being hunted?" she asked. That shut him up. He turned to me. "You married her to block a land claim?" "I married her because she's got grit, and because she belongs here, same as her sisters. 6 of 'em, right?" My jaw tightened. He'd seen too much. "Well," he drawled, "be a shame if someone thought you were hiding minors from territorial custody, especially if they believed you were exploiting them." I stepped off the porch, boots crunching gravel. "You gonna say that again?" He grinned. "Oh, I ain't saying it. I'm just wondering how others might see it." Tessa took my arm. She was trembling. "Careful, Agent Finn," she said, voice cold. "You start throwing lies like that, they'll stick to your own coat before long." He didn't answer, just looked at her, looked at me, then turned back to his horse. "Don't go far," he said over his shoulder. "This ain't over." When they left off, I exhaled slow. My hands were shaking. Tessa sat down on the porch steps, face pale. "That man won't stop," she said. "Not till he's got what Pa found, or until we're dead." I sat beside her. "He's pushing hard because he's scared. Means he's got something to lose." She didn't look at me when she said, "So do we." That night, I found Tessa alone in the barn, standing beneath the hayloft ladder. The lantern cast her in flickers, part shadow, part fire. Her sisters were asleep in the loft above, curled up in borrowed blankets.
the youngest one clutching my old cavalry coat like a teddy bear. I stepped in slow. She didn't turn. "I know what you're thinking," she said. "You do? You think it's only a matter of time before he comes back with papers, or worse." She wasn't wrong. Finn wasn't the type to bluff for long. "I'm thinking we got two options," I said. "Run or fight." She gave a bitter laugh. "Run where? Every town this side of the Rio knows our name now. He's spread it like rot." I moved closer, lowering my voice. "What if there was a third way?" She turned at that, eyes red from holding in tears she hadn't let fall. "I already signed the paper," she said. "I stood on your porch and called myself your wife. I'll do it again if it helps." "I don't want that paper," I said. "If it's only a shield." She tilted her head. "Then what do you want?" "I want this to mean something." My voice was hoarse. "Not just to keep Finn off our backs. I want a life with you." She blinked. "Judson?" I took a step closer. "I want to build a home that don't need hiding places. A ranch where no one's scared to draw water or hang laundry. I want your sister safe, but I want you here because you want to be, not because you're cornered." For a long time she didn't speak. The lantern swayed slightly from a breeze, and the shadows moved across her face. Then she asked, quiet, "What happens when Finn brings more than threats? What happens when the badge ain't enough to stop a bullet?" "I shoot first." She stared at me like she'd never really seen me before. Then she moved, slow, sure, and put her hand on my chest. Her palm was rough, fingers cold from washing, but it lit a fire in me like nothing else. "I can't promise I'm not broken," she said. "I've been living with fear so long, I barely know who I was before it." "Good," I said. "Then we'll build something new, together." She kissed me. It wasn't soft. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate, breathless, wild. Years of silence poured into one touch. Her hands tangled in my shirt, and mine found her waist, her back, the curve of her hip where the borrowed belt had slipped loose. We didn't go to the house. We didn't undress proper. We just found each other in the dark, under the rafters, with the hay crackling beneath us, and the warm hush of sleeping children above. Later, she lay with her head on my arm, breath slow, bare thigh draped across mine. Her hair smelled like smoke and sweat and woman. "You still sure?" she whispered. "I've never been surer of anything," I said. Outside, a coyote cried once in the hills. She didn't flinch, and I knew then that she'd stopped running. For the first time in her life, she wasn't fleeing. She was home.
The next morning broke clear and cold. I was fixing a hinge on the gate when I heard the unmistakable sound of a lawman's spur, slower, heavier than Finn's crew. Tessa was on the porch, drying 10 plates. Her body tensed, and I reached for the Henry rifle leaning beside the fence post. But it wasn't Finn. It was Sheriff Emery Hayes, flanked by 2 federal marshals in long coats. Dusty, grim, but calm. Not the kind of men you send to shake someone down. The kind you send when you want the truth. "Judson Pryor," Hayes said, tipping his hat. "We need a word." Tessa came down the steps slowly. She didn't run, but her eyes didn't leave the deputy's hands. "Not here to arrest anyone," Hayes added, voice low. "But you've been watched, and I think you already know that." We let him inside. The girls stayed in the barn. Tessa stood beside me at the kitchen table, chin high.
"We're investigating Marcus Finn," Hayes said once the door was shut, "for at least 9 counts of fraudulent land seizure, 4 disappearances, and now Samuel Boone's death. That last one don't sit right." I said nothing, but I saw Tessa's hand tremble as she gripped the back of the chair. The deputy continued. "We found a set of land filings Finn tried to erase, but not before we made copies. One of them was made by a Samuel Boone. Survey map, claim coordinates, and a note that said, 'Line crosses Pryor's boundary. Safe man.'" Hayes looked at me, then Tessa. "Funny thing is, every person who made a filing against Finn's interests ended up dead, broke, or gone, except you two." Tessa stepped forward. "He killed my father, and he's coming for us." Hayes nodded once. "That's what we thought." We laid out everything. The gold samples, the map, the pouch hidden in the flour tin, the certificate. I told him about the threats, the veiled accusations, the watch planted in the mud, everything. When I was done, the kitchen felt too small for the truth now hanging in it. Hayes sat back and rubbed his jaw. "You married her?" he asked. I did. He looked at Tessa. "You agree to that of your own will?" I did. "Then you've done nothing wrong, and everything right." He looked between us. "But that don't mean you're safe." One of the marshals leaned in. "He'll come back. Desperate men always do." "What do we do?" I asked. Hayes stood up. "You hold the line. We'll stay close, but we won't be in plain sight. When he comes back, and he will, let him show his cards." Tessa swallowed. "What if he brings more men?" "Then we bring more law." After they rode out, Tessa collapsed onto the chair, hands over her face. "I didn't know it would go this far," she whispered. "It already had," I said, kneeling beside her. "But now we got light on it." She looked at me, and this time it wasn't fear in her eyes. It was trust. Real, solid, earned trust. I pulled her close, and we sat there on the kitchen floor, 2 people no longer running, just waiting.
He came just before dusk, alone. No badge, no escort, no smug smile. Just a dust-caked stallion foaming at the bit, and a man who looked like he hadn't slept in days. His coat was torn, his boots mismatched, and one eye looked bruised deep purple under the brim of his hat. Tessa saw him first. She was chopping kindling out back when the rhythm of the axe stopped. "Judson," she called, her voice brittle. "It's him." I stepped out, Henry rifle already in hand, but I didn't raise it. Finn didn't even dismount. He sat tall in the saddle, swaying a little, like a man who'd been kicked and was still too proud to fall. "You thought you could hide her from me," he said, his voice rough and wild. "Thought marrying her would change a damn thing?" I didn't answer, just stood there, heart calm, thumb on the hammer. "You think I don't know what you're doing?" he snarled. "The land, the gold, the law sniffing around. You think you're clever?" Tessa stepped out from behind the woodpile. No weapon, just her, tall and straight in that same too-big shirt she wore like armor. "You're done, Marcus. The sheriff knows. The marshal saw the filings. My pa wrote your name down before he died." That made him twitch. His left hand went toward his coat, too slow, too obvious. "You think I won't shoot a woman?" he growled. "You won't get the chance," I said. And then Hayes stepped out of the barn. So did both marshals. Finn's horse danced sideways in panic. He drew, but it wasn't a gun. It was a rusty old claim deed, crumpled and stained. "Here!" he shouted, cracking his voice. "Take it! Take the whole goddamn claim! Just let me walk!" Hayes walked forward slow, revolver loose in hand. "You ain't walking, Marcus. You're standing trial. For Boone, for Leverett, for Rios, for the child in Ash Hollow. We got it all." "I was trying to survive," he spat. "You don't get it. The mines are drying up. The railroads are swallowing everything. I was just—" "You were killing men," Hayes said, "and you tried to ruin this one." Finn looked at me then, hatred flickering behind his bloodshot eyes. "You think you've won? You think you'll keep her safe?" He turned his horse in one last act of defiance, but the marshals already had his reins. The arrest was silent. He didn't fight once the irons clicked, didn't beg, didn't curse. Just went hollow. Tessa leaned into me as they led him away. Her body trembled, but her jaw was set hard. "Is it really over?" she whispered. I wrapped my arm around her waist. "The worst of it." "Then why do I still feel like I'm waiting for the other boot to drop?" I pressed my lips to her temple. "Because you've been running so long, standing still feels wrong." She exhaled. Not relief, not yet, but something close. That night we watched the stars come out from the porch swing. She sat on my lap, blanket over our legs, her bare feet tucked under mine. The girls were inside, safe. The land was quiet. And for the first time, I believed we just might have a chance at peace.
The world didn't end with a gunshot. No last ride, no gallows, just the quiet crack of a door closing as the marshals led Marcus Finn away. The next morning, the air smelled different, like the land itself had been holding its breath and finally let go. A soft breeze pushed through the cottonwoods along the creek, and the light seemed gentler, warmer. But maybe that was just me seeing things new. I found Tessa on the back stoop, barefoot in one of her own dresses now, mending a ripped sleeve with a needle so fine I could barely see the thread. Her hair was still braided from sleep, a few strands loose around her face. She looked young for once. I sat beside her, coffee in hand, and said nothing for a long time. Finally, she asked, "You ever wake up expecting a fight and then feel lost when it doesn't come?" "Every damn day during the war," I said. "Then one day it stopped, and the silence felt louder than the bullets." She nodded slowly. "That's what this feels like." The girls were in the barn again, playing. Actually playing. Their laughter floated across the yard, wild and free. The littlest one, June, was chasing a chicken with a wooden spoon. They looked like kids again. Not fugitives, not orphans, just girls. Tessa watched them and wiped a tear with the back of her hand. "I keep thinking it's all gonna vanish, that I'll wake up with dirt in my teeth and paws gone, and we're still running barefoot down the ridge with nothing but fear in our hands." I put my arm around her and drew her in. "I ain't dreaming, but you are waking up to something new. We both are." She looked at me, really looked, and I could see her searching. Not for danger this time, but for truth. "You still want this? Even now that you know it's not about land or gold?" "I never wanted the gold. Truth is, I didn't even want company. But now? Now I can't imagine this house without your girls screaming through it. Can't imagine this porch without you mending something that don't need mending just to keep your hands busy." She laughed softly and leaned her head on my shoulder. "I thought marrying you would be the hard part. Turns out, letting myself be loved, that's harder." I didn't speak, just pulled her tighter. Later that afternoon,
We hung a new horseshoe above the door, a little tradition I remembered from back east, not for luck, but for marking a new beginning. Tessa kissed my cheek when I hammered the last nail in. "I'm staying," she said simply. Not out of fear, not out of duty, just because she wanted to. That night, we lay together slow, not in a frenzy like before, not in desperation, but in warmth. Her breath on my neck, her fingers tangled in mine, her leg hooked over mine like it had always been there. She fell asleep like that, peacefully, finally. And I stayed awake just a little longer, listening to the night and thinking. I never asked for this, never expected any of it. But now that it's here, I wouldn't trade it for all the gold buried under this whole damn valley.
3 months passed. The snows came late that year, heavy and clean, the kind that blanketed everything in silence and made even a rancher believe in new beginnings. The prior place, once a hollow echo of routine, had become a living, breathing thing. Warmth seeped from the windows now. Laughter danced through the rafters. Boots of all sizes lined the porch, drying beside the woodpile. Inside, the table was too small for all of us, so I built a bigger one. Mornings began with noise, tin cups clanging, someone fighting over hair ribbons, Tessa yelling good-natured threats about cold biscuits and hot irons. I used to dread waking up. Now I rose with the sun, just to see them already halfway into the day. The gold? It stayed buried. We made our filings. Sheriff Hayes saw to it that no false claims could be made, and the marshals kept a discreet watch for weeks after Finn was hauled off to the capital. But we didn't touch a single ounce. Not yet. Instead, I bought nails, wood, seed, hired a stonemason to help rebuild the old barn wall that had sagged for years. Didn't pay him in gold. Paid him with cattle and labor and promises that actually meant something. The land hadn't changed, but we had. Tessa kept her promise. She worked harder than any ranch wife I'd ever known. Helped fix fences, taught the girls their letters, even organized a supper with the neighbors who used to whisper behind her back. She stood tall when they arrived, flour on her cheek, apron stained, hair pinned, and welcomed them like this had always been her home. By the end of that night, even the most skeptical widow in Milestone Ridge had taken a second helping of Tessa's blackberry cobbler. I found her afterward in the kitchen, wiping the edge of the table with one of my old shirts. She looked up, flushed with the kind of pride she never let herself feel before. "You're good at this. Being a wife? Being you." She came to me then, slow, certain, and wrapped her arms around my waist. "I still have dreams," she murmured, "of running, of Pa calling for me from somewhere I can't reach." I stroked her hair. "Do you wake up scared?" "Sometimes. But not always?" She smiled. "Not always." June came in then, barefoot and wild-haired, asking for a story before bed. I picked her up, slung her over my shoulder, and she squealed like a stuck piglet. Tessa laughed, a full belly laugh, and I realized I hadn't heard that sound the day she arrived. We had no treasure map, no glittering reward, just each other. That night, as I stood at the edge of the property watching the moon hang low over the hills, I remembered something Samuel Boone once told me years ago over a shared jug of cider. "Some gold can't be smelted. It walks, it talks, it keeps you alive when everything else burns." I used to think he was talking nonsense, but now I understood. What I'd inherited wasn't just land, or danger, or secrets. It was them. 7 girls with nothing left, and one woman who chose to stay when she could have run. I turned back towards the house, warm, noisy, full of life. And I knew I'd struck something deeper than any vein in the earth.